Welcome to the Feminist Exec, the podcast where women in leadership share their stories, challenges, and triumphs. I'm your host, KP, and together we'll dive into the real talk behind breaking barriers, leading with impact, and redefining success on our own terms. Get ready to be inspired, empowered, and equipped to take your leadership to the next level. This is the Feminist Exec. Let's forge your future. Welcome to the Feminist Exec podcast. I am very excited today to have with us Shari Christofferson. Shari is originally a supply chain technology outsider. She took on a challenge in the family business, which started out as a question to figure out what her dad did for a living and turned into a consulting project and then a full immersion into business and industry. Shari attempts to stay sane by staying close with family and friends, martial arts, which is interesting, and home remodeling and gardening with her husband. Welcome, Shari.
Thank you, Kate. It's so nice to be here with you today.
Let's get right into it. You have built a career solving complex challenges at the intersection of mobile infrastructure, robotics, human performance. What originally drew you to this space and what has kept you here?
I love these origin story questions because mine is what I do all the time. I stumble into things and just see where it takes me. In this case, had come home from working in geology out in California. I used to work in geotech, so investigating active fault lines and things. You know, geology is a 3D problem solving game. Everything is thinking in 3D, nothing's linear. And so I think as I learned more about the business, I started to realize that business itself, as well as technology, and especially the intersection of those, is pretty three-dimensional and complex and turns out to be fun. So I think that's what's kept me here, as well as the fact, as you mentioned, it is a family business. So that keeps it real.
What's your role today? Where are you in the company? Tell us a little bit about what you do from a day-to-day perspective.
Wow. Well, technically I'm called the president, and I feel like I will do whatever I have to do in any day, but most of it is intersecting between our engineering and support team and our partners, and then of course our customers. So I get really my hands into every little thing, maybe not always to the love of everyone else, but I definitely get in there, and you have to, you have to understand how your customers are looking at what you're doing, and you have to look at your internal team and take care of them, make sure those two things meet. And then of course we go through a channel, and so you have to understand their goals and their company missions and help everybody work together. That's where it's at.
So you're in supply chain tech. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what your business does and what problems you guys are solving on a day-to-day perspective?
Sure. Every day we are taking in real-time information from our customers, logistics centers, manufacturing sites, mostly live communication data over wired and wireless networks. And we are solving problems. So we're making sure problems are quickly identified, and then data from what we collect, as well as other sources that might be relevant to the problem. And of course, we use words like automation, and it is automated compared to what it is now. But at the end of the day, it's definitely a person to person getting in there and helping people solve problems that impact their day-to-day business. So it's very fun, and it is challenging and exciting. Yeah, that's what we do.
Was there a pivotal moment early on in your career that set you on the path towards, this leadership position in your family business and how you're approaching leadership in mobile systems, enterprise innovation?
I wish there was. I think what happens is you just start getting to work and you realize, I got to do this. We have to keep moving forward. There's a great opportunity, and you just have to keep getting in and getting your hands dirty and talking to people. And as you do that, it almost seems like if you're doing it well, or if you're moving the ball down the court, it just keeps going and keep solving problems. And you just one thing leads to another. I don't know if there was necessarily a decision, but I think if you're going to work hard and you're going to work with people, they might as well be people that, you have a lot of respect for, and that end goal of the success of the business it's great when it comes back to your family and friends. And so nothing really motivated me in other areas as much. I mean, of course, everyone goes to work, they want to do their job well, but there's just like that little extra something that drives you and keeps you going because, things aren't always great in business, but
Hmm.
if you're like, there's something more personal and deep in doing this. And I think that's what really made me realize, like, I'm sticking with this because I just try a lot of different things and my career path wasn't clear to me from the very beginning and it shifted a lot. And I think that's maybe not a good thing all the time, but at the end of the day, I think it was good because I found out where I needed to be. And so, yeah, just keep going.
I mean, geology to technology is not too far of a leap, right? But your connection that you made with the 3D systems is really interesting, kind of how you're looking at all those solutions.
Yeah, it has been interesting. You try to find things that you pull from, and I think that and just personal leadership, working together, seeing problems, and trying to fix them. I think if that's the kind of person you are, which I guess I am, it works out.
I love that. What challenges have you faced between transitioning between some of your different roles in product development, managing customer success, your strategic partnerships? You mentioned you go through a channel. How did those experiences shape you?
Well, yeah, there's a lot to work with there. I mean, ultimately, you just have to have integrity and realize that there really are not any shortcuts. I mean, look, we're all selling technology. The point of a lot of times doing what you're doing is you're saying, "Hey, look, you have a process that it goes from A to Z, and we're saying you can get there with just one stop. You don't have to go through the whole alphabet, and that's progress. That's for sure." But I think in moving through because businesses are run by people and not robots, you got to work with people. And that, I always joke with people say, well, how are we gonna integrate this? Or how are we gonna do that? The technology part is the easy part. The hard
Hmm.
part is you have a company culture, you have a way of doing business, and that's true for our customers as well. And that has really been a big challenge, right? Is navigating a whole nother company, a whole nother culture in trying to work with your customers. Very rarely are problems we run into technology related, and I guess I can't say that enough, but people, relationships, integrity in what you're doing has really proven to me to be something I take with me in any role.
Yeah, there's often this perception that business to business or B2B is like you're talking to this amorphous company type thing, but you're really talking to another person. It really is people to people, right? You're dealing with the people, you're dealing with their culture, their communication and how they solve problems. That's really powerful.
Right, I'm sure you run into that as well, right? Like it's great to be automated, but somebody has to pull the lever.
There's a human in the loop, as they're saying now. So, diving a little bit more into your success and how you have evolved from building products and building teams and partnerships, how has your definition of success changed or evolved as you've gone through that part of your career?
Yeah, it's definitely taken a very long view as opposed to some large poof, all of a sudden, you're successful. In our particular business, we went from being, and most companies are very reactive. Okay, we build a product, we put the product out, and it doesn't work. You give us a call and you say, hey, it's not working. And shifting from that into essentially proactive. I know that's an overused buzzword, but essentially that we needed to go after the customer to let them know that we're seeing something you need to pay attention to. We're seeing things in your business and in the technology stack that is not allowing your end users to do their job. Hey, let's work together to get that fixed. And everyone talks about the digital transformation and all this. I mean, we did it. We went through it for our own company, and many companies are working on this. So just a lot of trying to figure out where people are and helping them get to the next level or to the next stage with you. There's no substitute, there's no magic bullet, and every case seems to be a little bit different. So In answering your question, success is really incremental and it's a long game. I think I really had to readjust that. You read things, you see an article like, oh, such and such company, such and such, they did this amazing, and it just looks, when it's written about at the end of the day, it looks like some kind of, magic poof. It was great.
Hmm.
And I think when you're in the trenches, you really start to realize that it's incremental and it's slow and it has setbacks, and you have to change how you think about it, or not, or you get in a different business. But right, for anybody else, you're working hard and really bringing your team along, and doing that is it's a long game.
Not everybody can have a viral TikTok type of a moment with their business or their career. A couple of the anecdotes I've heard over several other people's careers is you're constantly doing the hard work and nobody sees that constant grind, that constant keeping everything up to date and working through things. And then poof, all of a sudden something hits, right? And people think it just is an overnight thing. And very rarely does that happen.
Agreed. Agreed. And I'm sure you see that in your interviews with this podcast, and probably within your own work and business. It's nice. Everyone, well, of course, we're highlighting the successes. Of course, we're highlighting the things that went well, but in between is a lot of getting knocked down, getting back up again.
Hmm.
And it's amazing how constant that is. And if you just don't like that kind of thing, it's going to be tough to stick around. And some people don't, and it's great. That's fine. But that's what I've really noticed for me is having I kind of have a history of it. I study it in its own way, in an odd way. Part of like martial arts is, you're getting knocked down, getting back up again. And that
Hmm.
is key to moving forward.
A little bit on, you said long-term vision. So as your leadership is just, centering on extracting that hidden value from the data, particularly the end-to-end user experience, how do you translate all of that into an actionable long-term vision for your team and your company's success?
That is a good question. The long-term vision for the team is interestingly very similar to the long-term vision that we're trying to help our customers get to, which is how do you make people's jobs easier, and to continue to do that, and not, there we see it, I see it a lot in my engineering team, which also happens to be family. My father founded and runs the engineering team, and it's very difficult. Everybody wants to like try, oh, let's try adding this, or there's this new thing out there, whatever that hype cycle is. And it's like, oh yeah, you got to bring that in. You got to bring that in. And what you realize, I think, in the long vision is for us at least, is, well, I guess the moral of the story is stick to your vision, whatever that vision happens to be. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like, you see some companies, they make these big announcements. I hired 50 people and they're doing all this stuff. And it's like, okay, that's great. That's your mission. Our long-term mission is really to try to stay focused and like drink the Kool-Aid, right? If we're telling our customers like, you don't need as many people, you don't need as many resources, you don't need as many complicated 50 tools to accomplish this goal. You actually only need one or two things. And that's what we're bringing to you. We also have to live by that too. I can't bloat my company with tons of people and have them work on all these things that are outside mission and scope. And mission creep can be disastrous, especially when customers might be asking you, oh, can we have this? Can we have that? And then it
Hmm.
circles back to partnerships. How can you work with your partnerships and still stay true to your long-term vision that also is beneficial for them? So yeah, I think about that a lot. That's a good question. I never really put it together that way. Thanks.
I mean, it speaks a lot too. I was on an earlier episode, we're talking about the importance of smaller communities, and you don't have to like go big on everything. You don't have to be the keynote speaker. You can be a change maker within a smaller group. And that seems to be a little bit of a little bit what you're saying from a business perspective is you can do a lot more with maybe a smaller team or a smaller group or a smaller scope and drive that change without having to do a huge, massive overhaul or hire 50 people, as you said.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly see it's a strategy. I mean, I think that's what it comes down to. I know people make a lot of sort of trite sports analogies with business, and it's, okay, it's not quite, but they work in many cases. And it's like, you can come in and have a strategy and a game plan that is to just take over an industry. And you've seen people do it. I don't want to name names, but I'm sure and you're in this industry, there's a couple big names and big acronyms, and they take over. They throw a ton of money and throw a ton of people at it. And that's fine. That's a strategy. And there's other strategies that work for different companies, to your point. Yeah. And so it depends on your mission again.
Do you have a tough moment or like a tough call that you had to balance some of these things like innovation, risk, accountability, like resources?
Well, I feel like that's every day when you're in a business that's doing something very, I mean, innovation is another word that gets used over again, but different and better. And people don't always see that right away. And the previous question, sometimes people are asking you to do things that are maybe a little over the top. So yeah, and when you come out with something new, at some point, someone is taking your word for it and giving you a chance, right?
Mm,
You see this in the robotic space. At some point, somebody said, I take your word for it. You guys seem to know what you're doing. Let's get in there and do it. And that's the intersection, I would say, the perfect intersection of accountability, risk, and innovation. So yeah, it's kind of the MO, kind of the modus operandi of the whole thing in this kind of business, which is good. We want it that way.
yeah. Yeah. Transitioning a little to your personal leadership, what do you think is the most underrated trait of an effective leader, especially in tech heavy, high stakes fields? You're dealing with big projects, big companies, big things. What's the most underrated trait in leadership that you've identified?
I would say that backing up your team and being able to manage pressure while taking risks, as you were just saying. And I kind of like to always keep this in my back of my head. You ever read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Yes, I love it.
It's hilarious. There's so many gems that come out of there, but one of them, the basic rule, the first rule that Arthur Dent learns is don't panic, right? And so I think everyone can get like really charged up, especially when, there's something huge happening. Customers are excited or upset or what have you. I think that the don't panic mantra is something that you gotta keep remembering. Also, just like from a personal health perspective. And
Not
I do
stressing out
panic.
about it.
Yeah, don't think that I don't panic. I panic with the best of them. But what I've noticed is good leaders, and I see this in a lot of my customers too. I mean, there are many times my customers, our main contacts tend to be our champions, and they've got a way of being like, all right, we can get through. We're going to do this, no matter what it is.
I think that's so key. It also ties to my next question, which is the environment and the culture of the team. So if you have this mantra of don't panic and you're guiding your team through that, that creates that, performance driven team. How do you create that inclusive culture?
Yeah, just again, I think so much of it comes down to mission, right? And you have to appreciate people for how they're contributing to your mission, no matter who they are. And this is a classic case, but it's true. It happens. You have like this amazing technical person, and they can't write an email to save their lives, right? But they have to write emails. And then, so, you have to keep the quirkiness of the people and have the confidence and realize that, like, yeah, okay, maybe the email was garbled or bungled, but like this person is literally great. And I think that's another mantra. You have to look at what they're doing. And is this person the right person for the job? They may have quirks and other things that aren't checking all the corporate HR boxes, but they're doing a great job. They are unique in what they're doing. And so you have to just appreciate people's experiences. And if they're not working out, I mean, I think that's another key piece, right? It doesn't fit into your culture, whatever that is, but I think it's good to be clear about what those things are and how people can contribute and what's not a good contribution. I guess.
Yeah, it made me think of I read Adam Grant's book, Hidden Potential, and one of the things he talks about is like the toxic high performer and how a single bad apple can spoil the bunch. Do you think the opposite is true? Is like some cases you can appreciate the really high performer that doesn't quite know how to write an email, but what about the opposite case where,
Yeah.
maybe they aren't a good fit for the tech culture?
That's a fun one. People's internal motivations or why they're being kind of a jerk is tough to try to unravel. And honestly, it's never your business's responsibility to try to do that. So I think you could do your best to lead and try to bring people along. I mean, you just see this anywhere. It doesn't have to be business. I mean, we see it
Hmm.
in our communities that we're interested in all the time. And sometimes people just need to be brought along. Maybe this is maybe this is a good time for this story, but like there's strategies there too. When I was a kid, I saw my brother playing hockey and I was like, I want to play hockey. and I was like 11. And I went up to Minnesota and up to Brainerd, went to hockey camps, and I got a lot of these guys. I mean, they were not welcoming to say the least.
Because you were playing with boys,
Those young
right?
boys, yeah, at this time, this dates me. This is many, many years, as decades ago. They didn't have a robust girls hockey program. So I had to play with the guys. All right, fine. I didn't care. At that age, there's not really a physicality difference because, it's kind of pre-puberty. So anyway, make a long story short, I get up to speed, actually more than up to speed. And I'm at at our local hockey rink with the team, and I just joined. And but I had this, like, a couple of them were just always in my ear, like always kind of like it's one thing, like some people are like, oh yeah, but actually I was pretty good, so like they couldn't just like dismiss me, but they thought they could intimidate me out of this, and so they kind of like always in my ear, always in. And one day I just turn around and and this is, mind you, we're fully equipped and there's no harm, but like I just turned around and punched the kid in the face. He immediately became my best friend. And I don't know, I've used that to different degrees. You got to be careful with that kind of thing. Of course, you want to bring people along. Maybe I could have just given him a hug. I don't know. But sometimes, you just have to use your instincts. Using your instincts and having confidence and maybe pulling upon those strategies that may have worked when you were 11 could work with some people if they're acting like they're 11.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, don't punch people for the record, but it does speak a little bit to the difference between men and women and how we handle both initiation, but also conflict. Like
Right.
women are much more likely to give you a hug and maybe not mean it, and boys can have a punch in the
Yeah.
backyard and be totally fine the next minute. What other challenges have you faced as a woman in a tech heavy field? I mean, both geology, right? And your career now. So what other challenges have you faced as a woman?
I don't know. I feel like many of the challenges I face are just people challenges. But I think the biggest challenges is when you start thinking that maybe people aren't looking at you for your work or for your contributions, and maybe you start to get a sense that they're uncomfortable or they are not thinking positively of you. And I think that letting that get in your head, and it's not happened to me too often because I kind of do have like this personality where I'm like, I don't really care what you think. But I think anybody and everyone gets a crisis of confidence. And I think a crisis of confidence is it's serious, especially in leadership, and it's serious for women. And I would say that it's happened. What my advice would be generally that you have to build a community of people who do care about you and are willing to boost you up if you do get to that point where you're like, I just, I'm working really hard and I'm not getting there. And why? Is it because I'm a woman, or all these guys are kind of like chumming up, and where are my chummy people? And you have to build it. You have to focus on it. It is a thing. It is a thing to have people around you. And if it's not automatic and you don't have your tribe, it can be challenging. But there's many strategies. You could go scorched earth if you wanted. And that doesn't work necessarily all the time, but I think the challenges of not having exactly a tribe, but also to be adaptable. And I found that getting around that. I mean, you're asking me what the challenges were. I guess I'm giving you more how I dealt with it, but I think that's key. I think you have to realize what this landscape is, as trite as this is, as like as many posters as you see with it. And it's kind of funny, you always say, think positively. And you're like, what? It's positive. Of course I'm thinking positively. But really it is important when you're in a place where you're not necessarily sure that everyone's going to accept you for whatever reason. It's got to be, they're thinking, just keep it in your head that they're keep thinking positively about you. And you know what I found? Mostly they are.
Hmm.
Mostly they are.
Mostly people are good.
It's turned out that way. Like with the kid in the hockey team. I mean, sometimes they're going to get, who knows, at the end of the day, I think he was just like in love with me or something. I don't know. And it was acting odd, and it's odd to think that like full grown adults would act this way, but I think they do sometimes. And I over and over again, I just have to remind myself that. And I think it is a good approach to those challenges of being different.
At the end of the day, we're all kids at heart, right? At
Aren't
some
we?
level, or wish we were kids still. I know for millennials and Gen Xers, a lot of us are like, "Oh, we wish we could go back to the easy days." But this concept of crisis of confidence, I really like that. And I want to dig into that a little bit more. How how do you see that? Is that, like imposter syndrome where you think you're not good enough? Is that like I'm doing all this work and I'm not hitting where I want to be? How do people come up with this crisis of confidence? And maybe also how do they recognize that they're in it?
Yeah, because you're just sometimes you're panicking or you're spiraling out a little bit maybe and thinking, especially when you're working hard and you're tired and all these things happen. How do you recognize you're in it? I think sometimes it's helpful to have a person that knows you really well listen to you and go, "This isn't you. You're having a crisis. Like this isn't how you deal with things. I can tell by the way you're talking." A good friend does that, a family member, which is why I kind of started this whole thing with like, it's so important to really focus on family and friends all the time because they really will be the ones or close, whatever. They will be the ones to tell you this isn't normally how you act. For some reason, you're not feeling confident. And then you can dig into that a little bit of like, why aren't you feeling comfortable? And then allowing people to remind you that another old adage, I hate to like be saying every single like poster advice out there, but like fake it till you make it. If you're having a crisis and you don't really know, and sometimes it's not worth it to try to figure out why, because you got to get stuff done. You got to keep going. You got to move on. You don't have time to sit there and like go to like a beach somewhere and contemplate your navel for days, right? Like
You got to keep the hockey game going, right?
gotta get in there. Yeah, and, although I will say a little navel gazing is amazing, I love it, I highly recommend, but, yeah, I think when you're in a crisis of confidence, I think getting support, pushing through, and sometimes just faking it a little bit until you get back you get that feeling back that, that you're alright. Kids are alright.
Kids are all right. Switching from the personal view to the company view, how can companies, particularly like logistics and technology,
Yeah,
do a better job in supporting and retaining women as they go through potentially crisis in
yeah.
confidence and different phases in their careers, particularly in leadership roles or aspiring leadership roles?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess remaining human. If you are a human, you probably have experienced such and kind of recognizing it, yeah, and giving people some time and space to work through it. That would be my recommendation. I'm not an expert at that, but yeah, you're right. Now you mention it. I can think of some times where maybe I wasn't, picking up on things as well as I might want to about people and maybe let a few things slip and maybe didn't help people right away. But I guess the only thing I could do is, I would say this generally for an organization. Yeah, you got to keep trying to do that. You got to keep trying. If you hired someone, you thought they were good, and they start faltering a little bit, maybe give them that boost. Maybe give them some time. Maybe, it's not that critical. Don't panic.
Yeah, it's interesting, those moments where you as a leader have to recognize what's going on with your team. I've had experiences where like someone who is a top A performer has a moment and they either say something or do something that's completely out of character and you got to be like, "Wait a second, do
Right.
they really feel that way or do I just need to check in with them? Are they burnt out? Did they not sleep well?" Like and kind of turn on your spidey sense, if you will, to like check in with people and say, okay, what do you need? Do you need to take a couple unscheduled days off to kind of get your head right in that situation or something like that? But I think recognizing those moments, as you said, is something we can all work on. You're only human, right? As well. So, we all miss them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And any advice you have on these things, I'm open to, let me tell you. I don't think I have it figured out, that's for sure. And getting advice from other people, I think is helpful too. Like, what do you do when someone is, and it could be external too. That's the hard part is when it's sort of like you get in a fight with your brother or your sister and you're, okay, but you kind of live in the same house. So you're going to see each other again. You work it out, right? Kind of like with the
Hmm.
business, you're kind of on the same team. So you're going to see each other again. When it's external, that's when I find it the most challenging. Someone outside your business, outside your group.
So, speaking of advice, what advice would you give to women that are interested in the intersection of tech, operations, innovation, supply chain? What advice would you give to them?
I guess if I look at coming into this, it's good to get a breath of experience, I think. Like I've been reflecting on a lot of things and myself, I was all over the place. And if I could go back and kind of say, all right, how would I have done it differently? Which you can't, but you're right. You can only give advice. So how does that go? Ride the horse out a little bit before you jump horses, if I can use that analogy. Give it a shot. Don't let something like it seems boring at first, or it seems whatever the thing. You come up with a million reasons to stop doing things. As you know, I don't know if you experience this sometimes. Like and
Yeah.
you put something down and I think that do I wish that I had chosen this sooner? No, not necessarily, but I think that I look at successful people and what I see is that they continue on. If they've chosen it and they feel good about it and they have some internal motivations, then they can stick with the program, they can stick with the job, they can stick with the career and learn more because you are always learning and you want to keep doing that and then you will be the best and then you will rise and have certain unique characteristics and unique value to your projects, your teams, your jobs. And so that's definitely something I would say to myself is like stick with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Definitely. There's definitely low points and difficult challenges.
Yeah.
So, being in a male dominated industry, I mean, we've got the double whammy, right? The tech and the supply chain piece.
Yeah, yeah.
In your experience, what could men do better to be better allies or advocates for women in these tech driven industries?
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, they've been just as supportive or not supportive as women. There are some that are and some that aren't. And I think that if the men continue to focus on looking at the work looking at the job, looking at the qualities needed, and bringing people in and supporting them and mentoring them because they have aptitude or because they have a unique set of skills that is seemingly better than others, then that's what they should support. And they shouldn't necessarily, worry about women, non women. But I think the more people continue to hire and improve and mentor and work with people because of what they're bringing to the table, I think that'll continue that by default supports women. It supports
Hmm.
everybody. But I do see that like, yeah, it takes a little bit to get past those initial judgments. You may say, oh, this isn't the person that looked like, and I'm sure like you've experienced this too. I think we talked a little bit about this too with like hair color and these sorts of things that people
Yeah.
judge and you can't stop them from judging it. But I think if everyone just said like, what am I doing here? What am I trying to accomplish? What's my mission? What person really fits that? Aside from just saying, oh, this person has these physical characteristics, therefore they're going to be XYZ. And we know that's not necessarily true. Right? Like you talked a little bit about this. I don't know if you're comfortable talking about that, but
Yeah, focus on going back to what you said earlier, which is focus on the human. Focus on what the human brings, not what they look like. I know one of the human traits is immediate judgment. And whether you're blonde or whether you have short hair or whether
yeah,
you have a spiky mohawk, people are going to make a different judgment. I know personally, I've gone from blonde to brunette back to blonde, and I've had some purple and blue in between. And the way that people immediately judge you based off
yeah,
of just something as simple as hair color. Nothing about me has changed other than hair color. And their immediate reaction changes. I find myself doing this. If I'm on an airplane and someone is infringing in my seat, I could get really mad and I paid as much for my seat as they did for theirs, and they're infringing on mine. But who knows? Maybe they had to book at last minute to go see a sick relative, or maybe they have a medical condition, or maybe they just haven't been on an airplane in 20 years and don't know how to behave. So, those immediate judgments are things that you can try to get away from, right? And not have to make an assumption on someone based off of their physical attributes. Focus on the human, focus on what they bring to the table, as you said.
yeah. See what they can do.
Yeah.
Give them a shot. I mean, I feel that way for like what we're trying to do, and I know you're in this kind of business too, where you're trying to tell somebody, I know you used to do it that way, or I know what you're used to looks like this, but this is going to be different and better. It's going to be better. Give it a shot, right? Let it in, and I think that's let it in, people. Just let it happen. What blondes may have more fun. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe give people a chance.
Maybe the Mohawks have more fun or the purple
Exactly.
hair.
Like maybe someone had a wild idea. Maybe they're having a crisis of confidence.
Maybe. Maybe that's their way of taking themselves back and taking agency for themselves.
That's right. That's right. So many things to do with hair.
Yeah. Switching a little bit to like your personal growth motivation. I know you mentioned at the beginning you're in martial arts. So combining working in high stakes environments and you mentioned don't panic. How do you stay grounded and focused under pressure?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a physicality to that too, staying focused and taking pressure. I mean, I train for it, that's part of it in with training with martial arts is you have, this pressure on a physical pressure on you that you have to deal with and you have to be quick and you have to not think about, oh, I didn't get enough sleep last night, or, I'm having a bad hair day, or, this is not the way I want it. You have to deal with what's happening. And I've learned that has been ingrained in me through training. And I think people who play sports, whatever you're doing, if you have ever had to continually do this. And I think just continuing on, realizing you might take a few punches. You're gonna take a few. I know I'm not a violent person. I don't know why these punches keep coming into play, but from an analogy standpoint, you do. You get knocked down mentally, physically, and I see it where if you're going, again, I'll come back to the very beginning. If you're doing what you're doing for some type of, and I'm not knocking anybody's motivations. I guess what I'm saying is if your motivations aren't deep and true to you, and aligned with you, it's going to be real hard to
Yeah.
keep getting knocked down and getting back up again. But I think the more you do that and you keep going through it, you start to realize, oh, this is actually healthy. This is how I can stay in the game of life. These practices are really not necessarily business related, but you should bring them into your business if you want to keep on going. And it's not easy. I'm not saying that. That's what I think.
Yeah, it's like your theme song should be the Smash Mouth song. I get knocked down,
Yeah,
but I get up again. It's like playing in my head right now.
yes. Maybe that could be our walk-on music for this
Yeah, right?
podcast.
I love that.
What's your walk-on music?
So there's a funny story about walk-on music. In college, we had to do these presentations and it was for like a final grade.
Yeah.
And I went into the room ahead of time and I told the professor before I started to turn off all the lights and to press play on my laptop. And I went to the back of the classroom and he pressed play. And I had Eye of the Tiger start playing and I like went down the aisles high-fiving people, like a motivational speaker. And then I did my presentation. So maybe Eye of the Tiger. I don't know.
That's a good
Probably
one.
something
You can't
else.
go wrong with Eye of the Tiger.
I know. That's a pretty good one. So what's one piece of advice that you could give to your younger self at the start of your leadership journey?
One piece of advice to my younger self. I think it kind of comes down to being positive and staying with it. That's it. And I think I've done that, but there have been times when maybe you veer off course a lot. For me personally, it's different. I say if I'm giving advice to somebody else, it might sound different. But yeah, I hadn't really thought about that to myself.
If you were sitting 13-year-old Sherry down and telling Sherry what advice, what would you tell her?
Yeah, a little bit more focus. I think it comes down to what I was saying before, a little bit more focus. Focus on what you're doing. Find that connection to yourself earlier on. Like stick with it until you get to the point where, you are able to have that confidence. And that's the thread, right? That's sort of one of the threads is to have the confidence because you know what you're doing and you stick to your guns on that. It's not really that earth shattering.
But it's powerful.
Is it?
No crises of confidence here, right?
Not lately, no. I mean, I think yeah, and you just get used to doing it, right? You get whatever's working for you, yourself, Kate. I'm sure you have the same thing. Like, hey, this is working for me, and you've done a good job of bringing to light these things that help people. And I think that what you're doing here is great, and you should continue to do it. I enjoy your podcast, and I think everyone should listen to them and pull those gems. Everyone's got some gems, right?
Everyone's got some gems. And speaking of gems, what do you think is the most powerful leadership lesson that you've learned in your field?
I would say just again, I know I'm like a broken record. I feel like I only know a few things, Kate.
But you're consistent, and that's important.
Well, and that's part, and that maybe that's part of it, right? Like just showing up every day, not thinking too hard about what everyone's thinking about you. Setbacks are going to come, some may be devastating. There may be some devastating setbacks that you run into, but you got to keep going. And I see that. I've witnessed it, that, and maybe the answer is I don't really know how to put my finger on it exactly, but there is a transcendent quality you see in people who are working hard to do what they intended and set out to do. And when you see it, you go, oh, I get it. There's something there. And I've definitely see it. I see it every day in some people who are close to me, and it just really motivated me. And they're just realizing like, okay, today's another day. I'm going to get out there. I'm going to win. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to stick to my values and my guns. And more, I watch people do that. And I'm like, well, it's kind of the key to life, right? Because jobs, this, it all changes. And it's all difficult, but you got to keep going, right? I mean, you got to keep working hard and staying aligned with what makes you feel good, like what's driving you inside, whatever that is.
I love that. That all ties everything nicely back together around being human. Don't panic. Stay true to your vision and mission on the inside and make sure that aligns with what you're doing. I love that.
And have some fun, because
Have some fun.
you only live once. Maybe I had too much fun when I was younger. Maybe that's better. Don't worry about having too much fun. Will come.
Maybe have a little Smash Mouth or a theme song in the background every time you have a crisis of confidence, and remember that you're a badass.
Yes, exactly. And you gotta be, right? And that's, yeah, for women, whoever, like, you are a badass. You will persevere. You will make it. It's if you believe in yourself and you have some people around you who support you. I mean, it's true. You do need people to support you. There's no way around it. So find those people too. Maybe that's a good piece of advice as well. Yeah. I'm writing the book that's been written over and over again.
And you'll have all those motivational posters on the inside, right?
Oh, and when I see those posters, I'm always like, what? That's meaningless. And in a poster, I think it is, don't you? It's sort of meaningless coming from a poster.
Once you learn it and you live it, then it becomes meaningful.
Yes. Do you have any advice for me? Because I would like it. Sometimes I don't always know how to, you know, get some routines that are healthy and repeatable and make you feel good. Do you have any of your own that I can borrow?
Well, one piece of advice would be to own your power. So, when you introduced yourself, you said you were technically president. And what I would say is own that.
Yeah.
You are the president of the company. And if you wake up every day and you own your power,
Yeah.
then that kind of gives you that inner strength, that inner motivation to be able to do whatever your habits or whatever my habit stacking changes all the time,
Uh-huh.
because sometimes I'm doing 75 hard, sometimes I'm doing 30 soft, whatever. But I think that owning your power and just remembering that, and not being afraid to be the one that says, yeah, I'm the president of the company, or I'm here to make this decision or own this thing. That would be my piece of advice.
It's good. Yeah. Own it. I mean, it aligns up exactly with what I was saying. You have to just realize people are thinking positively and be positive and get out there and do what you do best, right? And kill it. That's the way you got to do it. And support others, which you are very good at. So I
100%.
appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. This has been good.
Well, thank you, Shari, for offering all of your advice and insights. I know I learned so much, and I hope our audience has learned a lot as well. So thank you for joining the Feminist Exec.
Thank you for having me.
That's a wrap on this episode of the Feminist Exec. Thank you for tuning in and being part of the conversation. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. A special thank you to our composer, Peter Legault, for the original music. I'm KP, and this is the Feminist Exec. Until next time, keep leading, keep rising, and keep forging your future.